Good morning, Bruce.
Good morning.
So, my question for you this morning is, what do you think about free will? Is that such a thing?
You know, that has fascinated me since my youth. And one of the things, so I went to college, and originally I was a philosophy major. And of course, my parents said, what are you going to do with that? That's another subject. But even as a young person, I was wondering about free will. Do we have free will? And I touch upon that in the Artema Legends series, specifically in the last book, The New Kingdom, because again, it's for adults. And Artema, the protagonist, the lead character, is asked that question, and he talks about it. And I think I may read a passage from the book about that. But I don't think we do. Clearly everything is dependent upon something else.
Right.
And, if you come in out of the cold and you bump into somebody and it turns out she's going to be your wife, are those choices? They're not choices that you made to be in that room, really. Think of a couple of boys hiking, and they come to a stream, and there's some rocks that you could walk across to get across the stream, and the water's running over, and they're slippery. And the two boys start to go across the rocks, and the one boy thinks it'd be funny, and he pushes the boy in front of him. And the boy in front of him dances from rock to rock to rock to rock. He doesn't have time to think about the rocks.
Right.
He doesn't have, it's not a thought, a premeditation. It's just happening. And he happens to be involved in the happening of it. And if he slips on the rock and falls in, and he comes out and he's all wet, a whole new chain of events gets set off.
Yeah.
If he makes it across dry, there's a whole other set of events that get set off. Let's see here. So Allagan, I'm going to read for a little bit from The New Kingdom. Allagan is Artema's father. Allagan is dying. He's lying in his deathbed. Another character involved here is Valdar. He's one of the wise men, the old wise men. And Cora is Artema's sweetheart and becomes wife. Allagan squeezed Valdar's hand and said, "It is good to see you one last time. I wanted to say farewell." Cora stood quietly at the foot of the bed. Valdar said, "I will miss you terribly." Everyone was silent. Allagan released Valdar's hand and turned to Artema. "I spoke of destiny. I knew El was mine. El was the wife. I have often wondered, are we free?" "What do you mean?" Allagan asked, "Do we have free will?" Artema thought, "How do I honestly answer? I do not know. Sometimes it appears so, another for verisimilitude, unenlightened wishful thinking. We are driven by ideas, thoughts. What creates an idea? Whence a thought? A motivation?" Artema answered, "Another eternal question. Even with the knowledge of E1, I do not know." Artema looked to Cora. She smiled. Artema continued, "I do not think so. If we cannot determine our thoughts, the original ideas, the origins of all that follows, how can we determine our ultimate actions?" He paused. "At the quantum level, it is all beyond our control." He added, "You can will yourself to act, but you cannot will yourself to will." He looked again to Cora. Tenderly she spoke, "It makes no difference." Valdar asked, "What do you mean?" Cora replied, "We act as though we are. We seem to believe we are." Valdar asked, "If we are not free, what of moral behavior, recognizing right from wrong?" Artima rejoined the conversation. "Describing behavior as right or wrong is describing what an unenlightened being would do, comparing that with what an unenlightened being would do. A perfect enlightened being would behave lovingly, in harmony with the One." Allagan said, "We have rules and codes, even laws. We make judgments." Artima responded, "Our judgments are the results of incomplete understanding, at their best, attempts to describe what an enlightened being would do. An enlightened being would make no judgments." Valdar asked, "But what of responsibility for our actions? If we cannot control the birth of a thought, the origin of an idea, the cause of a motivation, how can we be responsible for the result?" Allagan spoke, "But what of obviously terribly brutal behavior, like the defacement of Corbin?" He stopped speaking, pressing his lips firmly together. Artima thought, "I wish I knew." Valdar spoke, "Why pain? Why suffering?" Again, Artima was thinking, it always comes to this in the end. Why? Artima spoke, "I can only think of separation, isolation, the absence of the awareness of unity. But why the separation, I do not know. But in the separation there are words for empathy, benevolence, and charity." The room was silent. Finally, Allagan said, "My son, tell me again, what is next?" "Father, after all my travels and all my experiences, after all my studies and meditations and thoughts, I believe you are returning to the cosmic, unseparated consciousness, to pure consciousness, the essence of unlimited potentiality, the field of endless energy and information, love." Allagan smiled. "Pray it is so." Valdar looked to Artima and said, "We have always been truthful with one another, each of us in this room, and now is clearly a moment of truth." He paused. "Do you think prayer is effective?" Artima answered, "I pray. But do you believe it alters events?" Artima thought, "How can I honestly answer? Is my prayer effective? Does it change the course of events? Or is it merely my fervent wish?" "Precisely," said Valdar. "What do you think?" "I do not know. But what do you think?" "Through the ages, the wise have encouraged prayer, and who am I to disagree?" "Artima, do you believe it alters events?" Valdar pressed. "Whenever my prayer begins as a longing for a specific result, it quickly becomes less and less a request for that outcome and more the expression of a desire to become accepting of the unfolding events and the eventual result. As I pray, my prayer becomes a prayer to be in harmony. My personal desire fades. Praying for a specific result seems to be a manifestation of separation and incomplete understanding." You know, getting back to the free will, it doesn't seem, it's not logical. It doesn't make sense because, again, something always leads to something. But then I say the universe is clearly a miracle.
Yeah.
So perhaps there is the miracle of free will.
Is that a personal thought? Do you agree with what Artima says? Is those personal beliefs, or is that something you did just for the book?
No, it's my personal belief. So again, it seems to me, and that's one of the reasons I write, because I like to, I want to think about what I really think. And that's one of my motivations for writing, is to have the put the time and energy into thinking about what I really think and believe. And clearly, who knows the answer?
Right.
Because as I just said, if the universe is miraculous, it defies all common sense and logic. And how could there be something from nothing and
Right.
endlessly,
Yes.
no beginning, no end? It's clearly beyond our comprehension. And so perhaps, despite all the appearance, all the logic and appearance, there is the miracle of free will.
I do agree.